Okay, so the other category of theories opposing consequential theories for ethics would be non-consequential theories. Non-consequential theories will derive their reasoning for laws and ethics and logic based on an inherent logic within the law itself. So again, we have several theories that fall into this, and try to understand whether I'm talking about consequential or non-consequential. These are numerous ethical courses if you're going to study this as philosophy. So this is a very brief kind of overview of ethical theories, of the main points of ethical theories. I'm not going to get into details of philosophy because I just want you to understand the ethical theory as much so that you can actually apply it in the real world. So non-consequential theories, the most famous, like consequentials, where in consequential theory the most famous is utilitarianism. The most famous here would be the categorical imperative for Immanuel Kant. So Kant says, it's a very simple, very logical, and very kind of beautiful, succinct theory. And he says, when you can apply a law in all situations, at all times, when a law is absolutely universal, then it becomes a categorical imperative, a must. It goes outside of ethics, outside of morals, and goes up to the level of law. So universalization is what makes laws. The ability to apply in all cases at all times. For instance, an easy example would be, do not kill. Mind you, we said do not kill. Not self-defense, not any other aggregation of that. Do not kill. Do not commit murder. Do not kill can apply at all situations, at all times, in all ways. So that is an ethical law that can become a categorical imperative. Now, Kant understands that a lot of laws are generally applicable. For instance, do not lie. Do not lie is a law that you would argue most of the time, if not all the time, but most of the time, would be held as truth. But sometimes a lie actually causes less damage, at least briefly, to pass a period of time. So that's what he calls a maxim. A maxim is kind of a rule of thumb. So it's a law that applies, let's say, 70% of the time, or 60% or 80% of the time. These are maxims. These are laws that we apply most of the time. They're ethical guidelines, but they cannot become universalized laws, so they cannot become law as such or categorical imperative because they can't be universalized. And only universalization, only its application at all times makes it law. So that's Kant, kind of in a brief nutshell. Teleology for Aristotle. So telos means the end, where something is meant to be. So Aristotle has this theory of teleology in general about the human being, saying that what you were built to do, what you were made to do. So he says, so if you find a walnut, its ultimate telos, its ultimate joy, its ultimate happiness is to become a walnut tree. So to achieve your maximum potential is teleology. So that's his overarching kind of ethical way of looking at things. He thinks that you derive your laws by the teleology, by the telos, where things are supposed to become in their full fruition. So that's how we derive laws. Within that, he speaks of something called the golden mean. And that doesn't, be careful. People oversimplify the golden mean by saying, oh, it's the middle. No, it's not the middle. It's the best alternative between two extremes. So it might be 70% of the way to this direction, might be 70% of the way to that direction. It might not be the middle. But it is the best compromise between two extremes that would lead to the highest joy. So you can see there's a little element of utilitarianism in there, but it's more based on the decision now. So looking at the two possible extremes of the answer, find the best compromise in between. That's the golden mean. And he says that golden mean will help you achieve your telos in the long run. So it's between the golden mean as a decision making and teleology as an overarching ethic. Hope that kind of makes sense. Lastly, we'd be looking at something like pragmatism. I'm putting Nietzsche's name here, but you could put several philosophers' names here. Pragmatic decisions, the problem with them is, while they're extremely practical and on a selfish level, they're perfect for us because I will decide my laws according to what suits me best, according to what is best for me. But that isn't something really we can universalize or we can create laws with. That is something very personal. So Nietzsche is considered to be one of the people that would be considered an elitist philosopher because he thinks different people will follow life in different ways. Pragmatic decisions are very much how we kind of live on an everyday life, so it's important to think about it, because although there are laws, there are ethics, there are morals, most of the time if we know we can get away with it, we do on a practical level, on a pragmatic level. You might break the traffic lights if you know that there's nobody around and there's no cop around. You might violate the law or jump over it in turns or do something in your everyday life which didn't harm anyone and at the same time created good for you. This is on a practical level. It'll violate law, violate ethics, but pragmatically applies. Problem with pragmatism is obviously we cannot derive laws from pragmatism, because then if you actually universalize pragmatism, you'd end up with the rule of the jungle. You'd end up with basically the mighty win and the weak follow, which you could argue in many ways is how social fabric is actually constructed under this kind of disguise of an ethical background.